I've already built Moon Knight on this channel, but there's been a lot of updates both to how I make my videos as well as D&D in general, because there's been lots of expansions and improvements, and the 2024 update came out. So let's build Moon Knight with a bit of an update. Although I will compare the old build to this one at the end of this video. But let's go ahead and dive in with the species. We'll keep it simple and go with human. This gives us resourceful, so we have a heroic inspiration that we can use once per long rest. We gain the feature skillful, which gives us one more skill proficiency, and we're going to grab investigation because one of the personalities that lives within Moon Knight is more of an investigator, so that way we can knock out that skill early on. Then you also get the feature versatile, which gives you a feat, and it has to be an origin feat. And with how Moon Knight fights, it's actually a bit of an easy choice because Moon Knight is known to basically run in and have almost zero regard for his own well-being, to the point that when the villain Taskmaster tries to take on his fighting style, he just can't do it because he can't take that much of a beating. So we're going to take the origin feat, tough. We need the extra health, and this gives us an extra 2 points of health per level of this overall build. Then when it comes to a background, you do kind of deal with the god of the moon, Khonshu, so we're going to grab Acolyte. This gives us skill proficiencies in insight and religion, while at the same time giving us the magic initiate feat, forcing us to go into the cleric spell list. So we're going to grab some pretty great cleric spells as far as I'm concerned, with Word Radiance allowing you to attack everything around you in a very short range, and Toll the Dead. It's one of the highest damaging cantrips in D&D, as long as you don't factor in ways to boost up Eldritch Blast. Then, because you're going to be taking plenty of damage, we want to make sure we have a way to recover that health in as many ways as possible, so we're going to grab the spell Cure Wounds. You can cast this spell once for free without using a spell slot thanks to this feat, but it is added to your spell list if you do have the ability to cast spells. But we're going to worry about that a bit later. Then when it comes to our ability scores, we're going to have a point spread that looks like this. It's a bit of a weird spread, but it'll make sense later. Then when it comes to a starting class, in my original build, I went with a barbarian to deal with that being able to take a beating thing. But there are some major downsides to being a barbarian and all of the features that come with it. So instead, we're going to go with a fighter because you are pretty darn good with a lot of different combat styles. This gives us 2 more skill proficiencies, so we're going to grab perception and athletics. We get to choose a fighting style, and because he's good with so many different styles of fighting, we just want to make sure we cover all of our bases. So we already can use plenty of different weapons, but the one thing we're not great at by default in D&D is our unarmed strikes. So we're going to take unarmed fighting to help boost this up. This makes it so that when you're doing an unarmed strike, your unarmed strikes deal 1d6 plus your strength modifier, or 1d8 if you have nothing in your hands. And at the start of each of your turns, you can deal a d4 of damage to anybody you're grappling. Also at first level of fighter, you get second wind. And this is going to be another way that you can recover some health whenever you need it, because as a bonus action, you can regain a number of hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level. You can only use this feature twice per short or long rest, regaining 1 use on a short rest or all of your uses on a long rest. You actually get more uses of it as you level up in fighter. Then the last thing you get at first level of fighter is weapon masteries, and you get to choose 3 of them to start. And I'm going to focus mostly on the more iconic weapons that Moon Knight uses. So we're going to use a dagger because that's the closest thing we can get to those moon-like blades that he uses pretty often, whether he's throwing them out or using them just in his hands. And frankly, these are going to be super useful because they give us the feature Nick. The Weapon Mastery Nick feature allows you to dual wield these weapons, and usually when you make an offhand attack, it requires your bonus action. But thanks to the Nick Weapon Mastery feature, you can actually do it as part of your action, freeing up your bonus action for something else. You just can't double up by using this as your action and your bonus action. One of the other iconic weapons he has is a quarterstaff, so that's what we're going to use for our second one, which gives us the Weapon Mastery feature Topple, allowing us to knock somebody to the ground if we need to. And sometimes he has some very tiny little moon blades, so we're actually going to grab darts, which is something I almost never use in D&D, but I think it's just kind of fitting. And that gives us the weapon mastery feature Vex. So you actually have advantage on your next attack after you hit somebody with that weapon. At second level of fighter, you get action surge, allowing you to take an additional action once per short or long rest. It does specify now that you can't take a magic action. Also at second level, you get tactical mind, which is going to be pretty helpful because you need to keep some sort of thoughts in your head a bit more straightforward with the multiple personalities that are constantly popping up. But honestly, I kind of think of this as tapping into a personality that fits the situation. Because when you fail an ability check, you can use this feature to expend one of your uses of second wind. And when you do so, you can roll an extra d10 and add it to the check. If you still fail the check, you don't use up that use of second wind. But I should note that this also doesn't regain health when you do it this way. Then at third level of fighter, we get to choose a fighter subclass. And with the insanely skillful way that Moon Knight is able to combat his enemies, we're going to take Battle Master. This gives us the feature Combat Superiority. So we can choose a few maneuvers and we can use those as more of like battle tactics that amplify our combat strategies. We get 4 superiority dice right away, which we regain all of the uses of our superiority dice on short or long rests. And these are D8s that you can spend on those maneuvers, which will come into play as soon as we cover those maneuvers. You'll get 1 more superiority dice to spend at level 7, and you get them at higher levels as well, but we're going to be doing a multi-class, so we're actually not going to get that one. We also get the feature Student of War, which gives us another skill proficiency, so we're going to grab History because that's generally kind of fitting for the character. But then as far as those maneuvers, we're going to grab Riposte or Riposte or however the hell it's pronounced, because I never know, because I think it's French or whatever. But this allows you to attack somebody that misses you when they attack. So you can use your reaction for 1 more attack on top of all of the other attacks you may or may not be doing. You get to spend a superiority die and add it to the damage at the same time. Another maneuver we're going to grab is Trip Attack because it allows you to knock a creature to the ground, and generally that's super helpful in D&D because when a creature is knocked prone, then you have advantage on all of your melee attacks against them. And then we didn't really have the ability to pick up another skill for stealth, so we're going to find a way to boost that up with maneuvers instead by choosing Ambush. This allows you to spend a superiority die to add that roll to the skill check. And if you still feel like it might fail, you can also spend second wind on it if you really need to. At 4th level of fighter, we get another use of second wind and we get an ability score improvement. So let's go ahead and boost up our strength and constitution by 1 point each, rounding them both out and making them far more useful. We also get 1 more weapon mastery. I'll fill something out on the character sheet, but frankly we covered the most important ones anyways. At 5th level of fighter, we get extra attack, so we can attack twice per action, and you can still attack with an offhand attack as part of your action if you're using the Nick weapon mastery feature. You also gain the feature Tactical Shift, so if you wind up using your second wind, you can actually move half of your movement speed as part of that same bonus action, and you can do so without provoking opportunity attacks. Then at 6th level of fighter, you get another ability score improvement, so we're going to go ahead and boost up our strength by 2 more points. At 7th level of fighter, you get another feature from being a battle master called Know Your Enemy. So as a bonus action, once per long rest, you can understand whether your enemy has any resistances, vulnerabilities, or even immunities, and you can know all of them. You can regain a use of this feature by expending 1 superiority die. And speaking of superiority die, at this level you gain 1 more dice to have at your disposal. Also at 7th level of fighter, thanks to being a battle master, you get to choose 2 more maneuvers. So we'll grab Sweeping Attack, so you can attack more creatures at once if you need to. And we'll also grab Pushing Attack, because pushing people in the right spot is kind of helpful, especially if you push them off a ledge. At 8th level of fighter, you get another ability score improvement, so let's go ahead and boost up your strength by 2 more points. Then at 9th level of fighter, you get Tactical Master. So now you can actually replace one of the weapon mastery features that you have access to by replacing any weapon mastery with Push, Sap, or Slow. Also at 9th level, you get Indomitable, which you can use once per long rest, allowing you to re-roll a saving throw while at the same time adding your fighter level to the number. And frankly, if you're re-rolling and adding your fighter level, you should be able to pass pretty much anything. Otherwise, your DM is really throwing you under the bus. At 10th level of fighter, you get another use of second wind and another weapon mastery, and you get another feature from being a battle master called improved combat superiority. So your superiority die upgrades from D8s to D10s, and you get to choose 2 more maneuvers. So we'll grab precision attack, allowing you to boost up your accuracy pretty considerably, and disarming attack to just take away your enemy's weapons. Then at 11th level of fighter, you get 2 extra attacks instead of just 1, meaning that you're technically attacking 3 times as an action. And if you want to go ahead and use the weapon mastery Nick feature, you can actually attack 4 times just as an action. Then at 12th level of fighter, we get another ability score improvement, and this is actually going to be our last level in fighter, but we'll use it to boost up our dexterity by 2 points. Partially because it helps all of our dex saves, but also because I feel like Moon Knight probably wears more medium armor, and we only had a 12 in our dexterity, meaning we wouldn't be able to take full advantage of our medium armor until we get at least 2 more points into it. But now it's time for a multi-class. And while I was very tempted to jump back into Barbarian like my old build and go with a Zealot Barbarian, I just want to go a different route. And it would also make sense to maybe go with something like Cleric, but Cleric requires you to have a decent amount of wisdom. And wisdom is usually more about keeping your mental abilities in check, and that's not exactly Moon Knight's style, so I could not justify having a decent amount of wisdom. So instead, we're going to be diving more into the moon stuff very soon by jumping over to Sorcerer. At first level of Sorcerer, you get some spell casting, which we will cover that in just a moment, but you also get the feature Innate Sorcery. So as a bonus action, you can kind of activate a transformation. It lasts for 1 minute, and it increases the DC of all of the saving throws for your spells by 1 point, while also giving you advantage on all of the attack rolls related to your spells. You can use this feature twice per long rest, but it is a considerable help to our spellcasting considering our charisma isn't really maxed out. At 2nd level of Sorcerer, you get Font of Magic, giving you a number of sorcery points equal to your level in Sorcerer. And you can actually swap sorcery points for more spellcasting, allowing you to recharge some spell slots, or you can spend spell slots to get more sorcery points. But you can spend those sorcery points on meta magic. And we could choose 2 meta magic options, which allow us to alter our spells in certain ways to help us out. So one we're going to want to make sure to grab is Heightened Spell. This forces the enemies to roll at disadvantage when they're trying to do a saving throw against one of your spells, and that's going to be very helpful on top of our Innate Sorcery to make sure that they fail saving throws despite the fact that our charisma isn't totally maxed out yet. The other one we're going to grab is Quicken Spell, because if you're using daggers, to make sure you use the Nick Weapon Mastery feature, which would allow you to use your offhand attack as part of your action instead of your bonus action, freeing it up. Having Quicken Spell allows you to use an action-based spell as a bonus action. So since you have that bonus action free, it's super helpful to have this meta magic option. And then at 3rd level of Sorcerer, we get to choose a Sorcerer subclass. And we finally get some more moon in our Moon Knight by being a Lunar Sorcerer. This gives us the feature Lunar Embodiment. So there's an entire chart of spells based off of the cycle of the moon, and you can choose which lunar phase to manifest once per long rest. And this is kind of like the idea that Khonshu is just altering where the moon is and its stages. So I kind of liked this idea a lot. Full moon gives you things like shield, lesser restoration, dispel magic, death ward, or even at a high level, which we don't have enough levels to get there, Rary's telepathic bond. A new moon, which is more about a dark blank moon, gives you more dark kind of spells like Ray of Sickness, Blindness, Deafness, or Vampiric Touch. But then of course there's the Crescent Moon, which is kind of the more iconic moon in general, which gives you Color Spray, Alter Self, or things like Phantom Steed. You also get the feature Moonfire, so you can call down a radiant light of the moon, which grants you the Sacred Flame cantrip. And thanks to this feature specifically, you can actually target 2 creatures with a single casting of this cantrip, as long as those creatures creatures are within 5 feet of each other. Then at 4th level of sorcery, you get an ability score improvement. So we're going to go ahead and boost up our charisma by 2 points. At 5th level of sorcery, you get sorceress restoration. So you can actually regain half of your sorcery points rounded down when you finish a short rest. But you can only do this once per long rest. However, a long rest would just regain all of your sorcery points. At 6th level of sorcerer, you get another feature from being a lunar sorcerer called lunar boons. So each lunar sorcery phase, like being a full moon, new moon, or crescent moon, focuses on a different type of magic. Full moon is abjuration and divination spells, new moon is enchantment and necromancy spells, and a crescent moon is illusion and transmutation spells. Whenever you cast a spell that is associated with the lunar phase that you are currently in, and you want to use your meta magic options, you can actually reduce the cost of spending the meta magic on that spell by 1 sorcery point. You can only use this reduction a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Also at 6th level of sorcery, you get another feature from being a lunar sorcerer called waxing and waning. So you can actually change the lunar embodiment as a bonus action by spending 1 sorcery point. And once per long rest, you can cast a 1st level spell from the lunar embodiment for free. At 7th level of sorcery, you get sorcery incarnate. So if you have no more uses of your innate sorcery left, you can spend 2 sorcery points to use it anyways. And when your innate sorcery feature is active, you can actually use 2 meta magic options at the same time. Then at 8th level of sorcerer, you get another ability score improvement, but since we're max level and you have the ability to gain an epic boon, we're going to go ahead and do that by grabbing the boon of fortitude. This does increase 1 ability score by 1 point, but that doesn't matter too much because nothing's going to get helped that much, but it will definitely help with fortified health, because going in headstrong and just attacking without any regard for your own health is kind of dangerous. So fortified health is going to help with that by giving us an extra 40 points of health. And whenever you regain health, you can actually regain an additional amount equal to your constitution modifier, but you can only use this once per turn. But since you have so many ways to regain health, that's going to be especially powerful. But now that we've covered all the levels, we need to go through those spells real quick. Now, we did jump into sorcerer kind of late, and we didn't have a ton of charisma to back us up. So I want to make sure a lot of the spells that we get are going to be helpful no matter if they don't hit or somebody saves against them or whatever. We're not going to be able to do this with everything, but there's going to be a few places that I really note it. But as far as some cantrips, there's not going to be a whole lot worth really grabbing, except for maybe Blade Ward to help boost up your resistances, or there's something that I can't help but want to grab just because it popped up in the Mummy, even though I know that's totally different than Moon Knight, but I just wanted some sort of Mummy reference with all of those scarab beetles diving into somebody's skin. So I'm going to grab Infestation. It just forces a bunch of insects to crawl across your enemy and forces them to move in a random direction, while also dealing at least a little bit of damage. But then as far as actual spells, we're going to grab Catapult because I love the idea of random bullshit, go! And this allows you to launch a random object and it deals some damage. This would be one of the few spells that actually requires a saving throw, but I just couldn't help myself. But we do need some that are just more utility, like Featherfall to spread out your cape and allow you to glide a bit more gently to the ground. Also be able to jump a bit higher with the spell Jump. A more just fling everything you got with Magic Missile, which does hit no matter what, flinging out 3 glowing darts. And actually you can upcast this to cast more darts if you want to, and each dart deals 1d4 plus 1. We want to boost up the actual ability to deal with combat a bit better with the spell Blur, making it so all of your enemies have disadvantage on all of their attacks against you. We want to be able to just constantly fling stuff out with the spell Cloud of Daggers. This is another saving throw spell, but it just creates a cube of swirling damage, dealing 4d4 slashing damage. And then the last saving throw spell I would grab is Hold Person, just because it's so insanely helpful, especially for a character focused so much on melee combat, because attacking somebody that's under the effect of Hold Person while in melee automatically makes it a critical hit, as long as you still hit them. Then we want to bit of ability to boost up our damage / accuracy with the spell Magic Weapon, giving us a +1 bonus to a weapon that we're wielding. And the last spell I want to make sure we grab is Haste. This doubles our movement speed, gives us an extra +2 to our armor class, and gives us 1 additional attack that we can make as part of our attack action. We can also use it for dash, disengage, or hide if we want to, but considering you have the ability to use Action Surge, that extra attack can go a lot further. This was a bit of a long one, but I really like diving into this character, and compared to my old build for this, I think both of them work pretty well, because the older build, I used more of a Zealot Barbarian because it's still a power of a divine creature empowering you, and with a Barbarian, you're kind of made to be able to take a ton of damage. But I did mix that with a Divination Wizard, which had its own complications because a wizard casting spells doesn't mix very well with a Barbarian because a Barbarian can't cast or concentrate on a spell while it's raging, so there's a bit of conflict there. This, you don't really have to worry about that. But let me know which build you prefer in the comments down below, and if you want access to the character sheet for this build or any of my other builds, feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the description down below, where I have access to all of my builds and all of the character sheets for them. And it helps support this channel, just like some of these amazing people scrolling on by, or some of the especially awesome player character patrons: Kiyosharo, Vakart, Alexander White, Ravelord, Nicole Biliak, Christopher Sams, Dark of Skies, Barrow Skrull, Felix Ulick, The 10586, Kevin Shirley, That Funny Man 57, CGC 2014, Panda Milkshake, Karket Kitsune, Decker Joint, Z13, Viral Nervar, and Daniel Galvin. Or there's the Dungeon Master level patrons that I play D&D with, which I stream over on Twitch: Brian Dunn, Dante Dixon, T Brownie, Julia B. de Oliveira, Shane Gilroy, Daniel Saffler, CommanZX, GameStake, and Devin Happy. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here helping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially if you want to have multiple personalities and play as Moon Knight in Dungeons & Dragons.